Hello, good morning. Today is day, 13? Yes, today is day 13. And you are currently watching a video on the least popular internet channel, the least popular YouTube channel on the internet. So, congratulations. um, Day 12 of quitting video games and quitting marijuana. I had set a goal for 90 days. My physical detox would normally in the past have taken about a week, and I set a goal for 90 days. And I figured that was a good goal to set, but the longer I'm in it, the more I think to myself that the goal is 90 days clean, and then the potential to return to use, like socially. Um, I've never had an issue with drug use in a social sense, or if you're looking to try to get something from the experience. In particular, I find hallucinogenics can be useful in that regard if you're using them intentionally. But the 90 days would be a clean break, and then following that, it would be social use or potentially the use of hallucinogenics for sort of personal growth if there was a need or if there was the opportunity to do so. But the video games is a different story. The video games is just quitting video games. And I have definitely started to come into the realization that I get bored. Normally on Sundays, today's Monday, normally on Sundays, my wife will do all of her cooking and laundry, and I normally do some laundry on Sunday, and I'm not when I was doing schoolwork, I had Sundays was my big schoolwork day. I would sit down and kind of knock out most of the sort of the typing and editing for the papers that I had to submit, and I would do a lot of my homework on Sunday. But I don't have the school on at the moment, and normally when she would be doing her cooking, she would be busy upstairs, so we wouldn't be hanging out. So as a result, I would have plenty of time to play video games, and I would spend hours down here, Total War or RimWorld or fucking on the Xbox or whatever. And most of it was not playing with other people. It was just me sort of in my own little world playing, and that has gone. And as a result, I'm sitting in front of the desktop now. I've been sitting in front of my monitor going, well, I could go to Reddit. I could go to YouTube. I could go back to Reddit. Anything new on YouTube? Reddit, YouTube, Reddit. And all of a sudden I realized that I was just trying to fill these sort of feedback loops again. So that keen sense of withdrawal is starting to make itself known now, certainly more than it was last week. And as I predicted a few days ago that it would get harder in this regard, it has been getting harder in this regard. My brain has been doing more and more mental gymnastics to try to get me to think about ways that video gaming could be reinserted back in a way that was positive. But having spent the time and gone through the rough patch, the little crisis that occurred, I'm not willing to give up on quitting video games as a whole. One of the visions that I came up with, or one of the sort of versions of myself that came out as a result of that little crisis, was that I don't want my children to grow up seeing me habitually video game. I want my kids to grow up seeing me habitually doing things that are not necessarily not recreational, but maybe more productive recreational, or more social, or more play recreational, that's hands-on and physical. And as a result, it's kind of narrowed down the window of things that I can look to do to replace video games with. So I was thinking, well, maybe I could build a bench in the basement here and pick up some power tools and start building things again, start putting things together with my hands, because I've been missing that. I've been missing doing that. Unfortunately, the cost output and the fact that we're in the middle of trying to buy a house means that there's really no reason for me to spend that money. And it's more important for us to kind of stay focused on what we're doing. So I'm addressing the struggle of not having something to replace video gaming with right away as a character building exercise more than something that I need to desperately find. Otherwise, I'm just going to go back and start on video games again. Until such time as I'm able to figure out how to replace it. And reading has certainly helped. I've been able to get through one book already, the Booker T. Washington book, Up From Slavery. I had started it, I was about a third of the way through, and then I put it down for a long time. But I was able to get through and finish that book, and having finished it, I'm on to his next book, which talks about his successes and his methods for how he was able to, build the school, create an environment whereby people looked at labor as something that was important, that was necessary, and I've actually gained a lot from it. Interestingly, this is just a side note, but I believe that his prescription for black people and for white people in the United States is as relevant today as it was then. The idea of taking responsibility for your actions and aiming to be a useful member of society and aiming to instill that in young people, the idea that they can be useful to society, that labor, that hard work is actually something that has innumerable rewards. Even though it's not going to pay you $1 million and it may not get you the nice sneakers that you want or the girl that you want, or you may not feel like the same way that you do when you're stoned or baked or whatever, the simple act of performing labor, whether it's remunerated or not, can be a deeply satisfying thing. And trying to find ways to reinvent that or sort of recur that back into society, I think, would be a useful activity for us, because it would stop us from looking at labor jobs as if they're jobs that people shouldn't want to have. Because there's a lot of people out there who won't ever really make a living off their intellect. But if we continue to deride labor work, those same people for whom labor work would be the way that they would gain their financial independence, it's unattractive to them, so they will end up going to the government for welfare. And this is true in the white community as much as is true in the black community. And if we're going to get on this, while I'm standing here on this little soapbox, I think race is it's a defunct and debunked scientific concept. We figured that out when we figured out that eugenics was stupid and pointless. We figured that out when we realized that you can't judge a person's intellect by the size of their skull. I mean, Jesus Christ, the size of my skull, that would be, it's ridiculous. I'm not that intelligent. I think, I agree with most people who say things along the lines of the only way to really get rid of racism is to stop talking about race. However, if we're describing culture, black culture, white culture, then I think we're on the right track there, because you can separate culture by skin color, I think, but I don't think you can separate inherent qualities by skin color necessarily, unless you're talking about culture, and even then there's exceptions to that. So anyway, long story all the way back. Reading has helped replace some of that, but there's definitely still a big dearth of space on Sundays in particular, where I need to find things to do that I enjoy to do that aren't play video games, that are somewhat whether productive or social, and the D&D stuff was meant to be that, but we had to sort of postpone it because someone decided to go down to Missouri and adults have adult things. But yeah, but that's kind of how it is, and that's where it's at for now. As far as the physicality of it all, I have still been sweating. I'm convinced now that the lipids, the oil content that you vaporize, particularly if you're doing low temperature vaporization, I'm convinced now, and I'm again no scientist, but I'm convinced that they are still inside the lungs, and that stuff is working its way out, and it's going to take a lot longer than it would have if I was just smoking or doing edibles, where it was attaching to fat cells. And I think because the lipids are active in the lungs, that it's taking longer for me to detox. Now again, my sleep's been fine. I do wake up frequently in the night to need to urinate or whatever, maybe 2 or 3 times a night. On average, about twice a night I get up to use the bathroom. But when I go back to bed, I'm straight to sleep. And when I go to bed at night, I do go straight to sleep. So I'm not having necessarily insomnia or sleeplessness, and my appetite hasn't really been affected. In fact, if anything, I think I've put on weight, and good weight, muscle weight. So that's been useful as well. And I would attribute that to the fact that we've been able to keep up the exercise over the period of time that we've been doing this. Otherwise, yeah, we have a long way to go. I can see that, but the goals and the hurdles and the milestones along the way are well illuminated and well defined, and there's plenty of information and help out there for the things that I'm going to see, that I'm going to encounter as hurdles over the next little bit. So I'm confident that we can keep this going. And to be honest, outside of the fact that my brain is trying to get me to get back into video games, I'm happy that that's happening, because to me that seems like progress. And the harder my brain fights to try to get me back into that easy dopamine loop, the more that I know that I'm on the right path. It's almost like you're kind of that, you know, that the resistance you collect along the way by doing things, eventually you're going to step out, and all of a sudden the resistance will be gone, and you will have stepped out into the light and go, oh God, I don't actually feel like I need to do video games anymore, and I've replaced it with all these great things, and I feel great, and I haven't been thinking about it. You know, it kind of like how when you cut yourself by accident or by purpose. I mean, the wound is there, and it's always there, and you know it's there until it's healed over, and then you completely forget about it. Or like a canker sore in your mouth. You're aware of it while it's there, but as soon as it's gone, you forget it. You've forgotten that it's gone, and you forget the period of time that it was a pain in the butt for you, or pain in the mouth. So I think that's sort of what's happening right now, is I'm collecting that resistance until suddenly the resistance just sort of sloughs off, and we're standing out in the open, and it's a whole wide world ahead of us. So anyway, that's it for me for day 13, and yeah. Ka kite.